Begin today the Gemara at the bottom of Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis, where it says, This is the Mishnah where it's talking about the different conditions that are written into every single Kesubah. And even if you don't write it, it's part of the Kesubah. It's part of the husband's obligation. One of them is, if his wife was captured, he must redeem her. And the Mishnah made a distinction between a wife married to a Yisrael and a wife married to a Kohen. Married to a Yisrael, the halacha is that he has to redeem her. And the lashon of the Kesubah is, and I'll bring you back home to me. You'll be my wife. My kehenes, he writes in the Kesubah, once you were captured, and there's a suspicion that you had a relation with someone that even against your will, so you can't go back to the husband, the Kayin, but I will bring you back home to your city where you come from. That's what it said in the Kesubah. So now based on this, the Gemara will bring a machlokes of Abaye and Rava. Amar Abaye, so Abaye said, Almana leKayin Gadol. What's if it's a case that it's an almana married to a kohen gadol? Now this is a marriage that's forbidden. A kohen gadol is not allowed to marry an almana. But nevertheless, chayev lufdaisa, he will be obligated to redeem her if she gets captured. Why? Because I still could apply what it says in the Kesubah. Ubikehenes. Some take out this word of bikehenes. What does it say in the Kesubah? That the husband is saying that I'm going to redeem you and send you back home. So over here as well, true, he's not allowed to live with her. He's forbidden to be married to her. But yet, true, he's going to redeem her and then he's going to send her back home. So the chiddush of Abaye is, even though in a usual case, what's the reason why he's sending his wife home after he redeems her from captivity? Because of the captivity. That's the reason why I can't live with her anymore, because during captivity, we're afraid that she had a relation with someone else. Over here, why is the reason he's sending her back home before the whole story of the captivity? Because she's an almana, and an almana is not allowed to be married to a kohen gadol. Nevertheless, but because the words of the Kesubah, could still be applied, that I'm going to redeem you and send you back home, so therefore, this is a condition that he accepted and he has to fulfill. That's the lashon of the Kesubah. However, mamzeres and nesina li Yisrael. If it's a mamzeres and a nesina, also two examples of a lav where it's forbidden for a yid to be married to, the marriage takes effect. The point of both of these examples are both an almana to a kohen gadol and a mamzeres and a nesina that are married to a Yisrael. These are marriages that are forbidden, but the marriage, the kiddushin, takes effect, and it is his wife, right? Because it's only a lav. So by a mamzeres and a nesina that's married to a Yisrael, he will not be obligated to redeem her. Why? Because I cannot apply what the language of the Kesubah says, and that is, and that I'm going to redeem you and I'll bring you back to sit with me as a wife, because she's a mamzeres and a nesina. She can't be his wife. He has to send her every single day. He's with her. He's being over her lap. So if he can't bring her back as a wife, why should he have to redeem her? That's not what he took upon himself in the Kesubah. That's Abaye's chiddush. Rava argues with the first half of what Abaye said. Regarding the almana to the kohen gadol. So Rava says, no, by an almana to kohen gadol, he will not have the obligation to redeem her. Why not? Kol she'isa shivya gaidam law. If the reason why she can't go back to her husband, the kohen, is because she was captured and we're afraid she had a relation with someone else, so it's the captivity which is the cause that she can't go back to the husband. Chayev luvdaisa. So then he's obligated to redeem her. That's what the Kesubah means when it says that I'm going to send you back home. True, I can't live with you anymore because you were captured, but I'm going to redeem you and send you back home. But if the reason why he can't live with her now is not because of this captivity, from before this already, there's something else, because she's an almana and he's not allowed to be married to her at all. So then, even though technically in the words of the Kesubah that I'll send you back home, it fits that he's going to redeem her and send her back home, but over here it's not the captivity that's the cause of this. It's already from before that he's not allowed to live with her. So therefore, over here, this obligation to redeem her does not apply. Leime, says the Gemara, shall we say, ketanoi. This argument of Abaye and Rava is the same argument of the following Tanoi. So the Brisa says, Hamader es ishtoi, person that makes a vow that he will not have any benefit from his wife. What happens in such a situation? So he can't live with his wife anymore. He has to divorce her. So now, the nishbis, after he made this vow, she got captured. So the question is, does he still have an obligation to redeem her? Rabbi Eliezer says, Paida, yep, he does have to redeem her, but then the Noisin lo Kesubah, and then he's going to have to divorce her and give her a Kesubah. So he is going to redeem her just because he made a vow, and he's going to be forced to divorce her. That doesn't mean that his obligation to redeem her goes away, but then he redeems her and then he gives her a Kesubah. Rabbi Yeshua says, Noisin la ksubasa. He has to divorce her. He has to give her the ksuba when he divorces her. He's not obligated to redeem her. He can divorce her right now and give her the ksuba money and let her use that if she wants to redeem herself. But he has no obligation to redeem her. And the Gemara will explain in a moment over here why. The Gemara will explain that it looks like this machlekes could be the same as the machlekes of Abai and Rava. But before we get to that, the Gemara first clarifies one point of Rabbi Yeshua's opinion. So Amar Rab Nassan said, Sha'alti es Sumchis. I asked Sumchis the following question. K'sha'amar Rabbi Yeshua, when Rabbi Yeshua said, Noisin lo ksubasa ve'eina paida, that he gives her ksuba money and he does not have to redeem her. What's the case here that he was speaking about? Is it k'shehidira ulebesayf nishpis, when the husband first made a vow that he will have no benefit of his wife, and afterwards she got captured? Then Rabbi Yeshua says that he's absolved, he doesn't have to redeem her. Or is that even going to be true if she first got captured, and after she got captured, now the husband made a vow that he will not have any benefit from her? Even then we say that he will not have to redeem her anymore. So Sumchas answered me, Lo shamaiti. I didn't hear what Rabbi Yeshua said, but it would appear as follows. Shehidira ulubasayf nishbis. The case of here is that the husband first made a neder that he will not have any anah from his wife. Then she got captured. That's when Rabbi Yeshua is saying that he doesn't have to redeem her. Because if you're going to say nishbis ulubasayf hidira, that even if first she got captured, and afterwards the husband goes and makes a vow that I will not have any benefit from you, so I can't live with you anymore, so you can't be my wife, so why should I redeem you? That's what he would be saying. So then what's going to happen? Asi le'arume. So the husband is going to come and play a trick. After his wife is already captured, he has an obligation to redeem her. He's going to create a circumstance where he can't be her husband anymore, and he's not going to be obligated to divorce her. So if afterwards he made this vow, it's too late. It's not going to change his obligation that he already had from before. Okay, but now the Gemara will try to explain the machlekes here between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. When a person makes a vow and he goes and his wife, that is, gets captured, does he have to redeem her or not? What is the machlekes between them? Says the Gemara, my love, don't you think the case over here is b'mader eishes kayin kamiflagi? They're arguing only in a case where this is a wife of a kayin. Why only in the case where the wife is a kayin? So let's go back again to the language of the ksuba. In the case where it's a wife of Yisrael, what's the language of a ksuba? I'm going to redeem you and bring you back home to me as a wife. If he made a neder and he can't have any benefit of her and she can't be his wife, he can't bring her back home to be his wife. So by a Eishes Yisrael, there should be no obligation for him to redeem it. There's no reason for there to be any argument about this. When is there an argument? If this is an Eishes Kayin. So what does it say in the language of the Ksuba by the wife of a Kayin? I will redeem you and send you back home to your house. So even if she can't be his wife, still you should have obligation to redeem her. So here is the machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. The Gemara explains, what's the machlekes? Va'abaye the Omar ka Rabbi Eliezer. Abaye's opinion is like what Rabbi Eliezer is saying here. It's both the same thing. Just like we said before regarding an almana to a kohen gadol, the fact that this kohen gadol can't bring his wife the almana to his house is not because she got captured. It's because she's an almana. She's forbidden to live with him. Still, what does Abaye say? You have the obligation to redeem her, because the language of the ksub is that you're sending her back home. Same thing over here. The fact that he can't live with her is not because she got captured, but it's because you made a vow that you can't live with her anymore. True, but the language of the ksub is that you're sending her back home. So again, the chiddush of Abaye is, even if there's a dava acher, even if there's another cause, not the fact that she got captured, there's another cause of why you have to send her home, still you're going to be obligated to redeem her. So whether the cause is because she's an almana that can't live with a kohen gadol, whether the cause is the fact that you made a neder and she can't live with you, you're still obligated to redeem her. So Abaye and Rabbi Eliezer seem to be saying the same thing. However, Rava says like Rabbi Yeshua, only in a case when it's the actual captivity itself, which is the reason why you can't bring her back home, then the husband was obligated to go and redeem her and send her back home. But if there's an outside cause of why you can't live with her, whether because she's an almana married to a kohen gadol, or because you made a neder and therefore you can't live with her, so at that point you're not obligated to redeem her. So these two things seem to be mamish the same exact argument here. Says the Gemara, not necessarily. We could explain this machlekes of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua in a different way. What is the case we're speaking about over here in this Braise when it speaks about a neder, and the question is whether he's obligated to redeem her or not? Completely different thing. Not a wife of a Kohen. We're talking about the wife of a Yisrael. I know if it's a wife of a Yisrael, so l'chayre, why should he be obligated to redeem her? After he redeems her, she can't come back home to him. It says in the language of the Kesubos that he's redeeming her to bring her back home. Says the Gemara, the case is ihi. She's the one that made this vow, not him. And now what happened when she makes the vow? The kayim lahu, and the husband allowed this vow to stand. That's either because the husband, when he heard the husband is the one, when he hears his wife making a vow, he said, yes, I accept your vow, no problem. Or he always has the option, on the day that she makes the vow, he always has the option to annul the vow. And he didn't. He allowed the vow to stand. So now the question is, who do we look at is the one that created this current circumstance that she can't live with him? Do we say that it's her that caused it to herself, or because he is the one that allowed this neder to stand, so therefore he's the one that's causing this circumstance? So Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is, and the Gemara says this with the following interesting analogy: Who nasan what? Who? Nice etzba bein shineha. He's the one that's placing a finger between her teeth. Meaning, he's the one that caused this entire problem, because he had the option to annul this vow. So the fact that he did not annul his vow, why are you sticking your finger into her mouth and now she's going to bite your finger? So over here, if he's the one that caused this vow that he can't live with her, so that's not going to absolve him from fulfilling his obligation to go and redeem her. It's his wife. He's obligated to redeem her. And from when they were married, this was a regular circumstance of a husband and wife, and there was nothing forbidden between this relationship. She could live with him. And now he goes and allows her to be in this circumstance that she can't live with him. That's not going to take away from his obligation to redeem her. Doesn't change from the original status of this marriage. Rabbi Yeshua says, she did this to herself. It's like she placed her own finger between her teeth and she's biting her own finger. She's the one that made this vow. True, her vow does not stand without the husband deciding that to allow it, but nevertheless, she's the one that made this vow, and therefore, if she can't go back and live with him, so from this point forward, he's not obligated to redeem her.
At the end of the day,
that is the argument there.
At the end of the day, he can't live with her.
And a chanami, true, but nevertheless, when the Kesubos says that he took upon himself this obligation, that's based on the status of the marriage, the way it is before this vow. Now the question is whether the vow changes that or not. Who's at fault over here? Who do we look at over here? Right. Okay, so now the Gemara asks him this. It doesn't fit into what Rabbi Yeshua is saying in the Braise, this pshat. Why not? If the point over here is that she's the cause for all the problems here, that it's not only the fact that now there's a question if he has to redeem her from captivity or not. Because she made this neder, the husband's going to be forced to divorce her. They can't live together anymore. If that's the issue, so then Kesubah maya vidita. Why does it say over here that the husband divorces her and gives her a Kesubah? Why should a husband b'chlal be obligated to give her the Kesubah money if she is the cause of this entire divorce? He's not interested in divorcing her, so she should be forced out in a divorce without any Kesubah. That's one question. V'su, another question here is, what else did it say there in the Braise? Amar Rab Nasan said, Sha'alti Sumches, that I asked Sumches the question, Kisha'amar Rabbi Yeshua, Neisan lo Kesubasa. Rabbi Yeshua said, give her the Kesubah money, ve'ein paida, and you do not have to redeem her. So the question was, Kisha'itira l'b'sayf nishbis, is this when the neder was made first and then she was captured, oibish nishbis l'b'sayf dira? Or even if she was first captured and then the neder was made that he can't have any benefit from her. And for Amar, and what did he answer? Lo shamaiti, I didn't hear what he said. And then he went on to say that, but nevertheless, it appears to be that only if the neder was made before, not if the neder was made after. Right? So now the Gemara asks, but if if she's the one that made this neder, so then why should there be any difference? What difference does it make if the neder was before she was captured, or if she was first captured and then afterward the neder was made? What did the Gemara say before? The whole point was that if the husband is the one that's making the neder, so if you're going to say that even if he makes the neder after she's captured, so then he's going to play a trick. She gets captured. He's not interested in taking care of her. So he makes a neder and he says to her, I'm sorry, we can't be husband and wife anyways anymore, so I'm not going to redeem you. But that's not the case over here. She's the one that's making the neder. If she's the one that's making the neder, there should be no difference between before and after. There's no concern that he's going to do Rama, that he's going to play this trick over here. So why is there even a question about this? So that can't be the case. The Gemara now retracts this, takes away, goes back from this pshat. It's not that she made the neder. Going back to what we said before, the adra ihu. He, the husband, is the one that made this neder that he cannot have a benefit from his wife. And it's in this situation where Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua are arguing whether the husband will have an obligation to redeem her. Now, how do we understand this machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua? So again, the Gemara before wanted to say that it's the same machlokes as Abaye and Rava. When you have an external reason of why the wife cannot go back to the husband, is that still enough of a reason that in a case of a kayin, that is? Should I say that in a case of a kayin that he's still obligated to redeem her? Because in the Kesubos it says that I'll deliver you back home. Or do I say, since it's an external reason, it's not because of the captivity that I have to redeem you and deliver you back home, so therefore now I'm not obligated. That's what the Gemara wanted to say before, right? But now the Gemara says, we can say, Abaye metaretz l'tamei, Rav metaretz l'tamei. Abaye will explain this machlokes according to his approach, and Rav will explain according to his approach. And as the Gemara here will explain all the details. Let's see. Abaye metaretz l'tamei. Abaye explains according to his reasoning as follows: Almana l'kohen gadol. If there's a case of an almana that's married to a kohen gadol, so as Abaye before said, true, there's an external reason. It's the isser of an almana that he cannot be married to her, not the captivity, but it's that reason that he can't be married to her. So kula alma le pligi, but nevertheless, according to Abaye, nobody will disagree about this. The chayiv livdaisa, he's still obligated to redeem her because that's the language of the Kesubos, that I'll deliver you back home. Mamzeres and Nesina li Yisrael. If it's a Mamzeres and a Nesina, it's married to a Yisrael. So the language of the Kesubos by Yisrael is that you'll be my wife. Kulam alei pligi, then chayav levdaisa. Nobody will argue about this, that he's not going to be obligated to redeem her because he can't be she can't be his wife anymore. Where is there an argument? Now, in both of these cases, before I read the next part of the Gemara, in both of these cases, the external reason that there is here, the isser that there is here, that he can't be married to her anymore, is all from the very first moment of marriage. That's the way it is from the first moment of marriage, right? But now, in the case of the Braise, this is different. Why? Because Mader Eishes Kayin. Oh, sorry, this is just one more thing over here now. Mader Eishes Kayin. In a case where a person, according to Abaye, this is when a person makes a neder and it's a wife of a Kayin, so she can't live with him anymore. Nami Kula Amole Pligi the Chayav Livdaisa. Nobody will disagree about this, that'll be obligated to redeem her. And the reason is the Hain Almana L'Kohen Gadol. This is identical to the case of an Almana to Kohen Gadol. It's actually even more than an Almana to Kohen Gadol. If by the case of an Almana to Kohen Gadol, from the very first moment of marriage, he's not allowed to remain married to her, nevertheless, the line in the Kesubos that says that I'll redeem you and bring you back home applies for sure in a case where he was married to a woman that he's allowed to be married to. And then later she makes a neder, or he makes a neder rather, and now he can't be married to her, for sure he's going to be obligated to redeem her and bring her back home. It's no less than the case of Almana L'Kohen Gadol. Ki pligi. Now, where is there an argument? B'mader Eishes Yisrael. In a case where there was a neder that the husband made, and he's a Yisrael, and he's married to his wife, and he makes a neder. So now, could he bring her back home to be a wife? No, he can't. But when did that happen? It's only along the way. He made a neder at a certain point. In the beginning, this was a regular wife for him, and he's able to live with her. Along the way somewhere, he made a neder, and now he can't live with her. So Rabbi Eliezer says that the obligation of the husband is established according to the way it was originally when they got married. When he wrote the Kesubos for her and he got married to her, and he said that I'm going to redeem you and bring you back home, in that time, that's the status of the marriage, that he's able to bring her back home. So that obligation will remain. But Rabbi Yeshua also, again, so it can't be compared to Mamzeres and Nesina. A person that marries a Mamzeres and a Nesina, from the very first moment, he was never able to bring her back home. But however, Rabbi Yeshua says you can't look at the way the status was in the beginning. True, in the beginning he was married to her as a regular husband and wife, and he was able to bring her back home, and at that point the obligation was applied. But later it changed. Now that he made a neder and he can't bring her back home, so now he doesn't have to redeem her anymore. That's Abaye's interpretation of this machlekes. Rav metaretz l'taimei. And Rav explains this machlekes according to his reasoning, according to his opinion. And he says as follows: Almana l'kohen gadol, whether it's an almana married to a kohen gadol, or even mamzeres and the sin, the same as also mamzeres and the sin Yisrael married to Yisrael. Kula amale pligi. In both of these cases, everybody will agree the eina chayav l'fdoisa, that he's not obligated to redeem her. The basis of Rav's opinion is, as long as you can't bring her home to you as a wife, not because of the captivity, but because of an external circumstance. So even by an almana l'kohen gadol, what's written into the Kesubos? Not that I'm going to bring you back home, but I'm going to deliver you back to me, that is, to the husband. But I'm going to deliver you back home to your city. But nevertheless, it's not the captivity that's causing this. It's originally from when they're married. Almana l'kohen gadol, he's never allowed to be married to her. So therefore, according to Rava, if there's a dava acha geirim, he's not obligated to redeem her. So nobody will argue about that. Kipligi, where's the argument over here between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua? B'mader bein eshes kayin bein eshes Yisrael. When a person makes a neder, whether it's a wife of a kayin, whether it's the wife of a Yisrael, and again the machlekes over here is the same machlekes, the same concept like we said before according to Abaye. Rabbi Eliezer also basamei kara. Rabbi Eliezer says you go according to the original status. When he married, this kayin married his wife. When this Yisrael married his wife, so there was a regular marriage. And therefore, what he wrote in the Kesubos at that time was good, was able to be applied. So therefore, he takes that obligation upon himself then, and it does not change if there's a neder made later. Rabbi Yeshua says you have to look at the present. Right now, there's a neder, and therefore things change. Now there's a dava acher. There's something else that's being guided that I can't bring her home to me. So you therefore, even by a kayin. True, it says in the language of the Kesubos that he's bringing her back home to her house, but there's a dava acha geirim at this point, not the shvuy, not the captivity itself. So therefore, the t'nai of the Kesubos does not take effect anymore. Okay, that's this sugi over here. Beneged to the obligation to redeem his wife. The Gemara doesn't say. Halacha always between Abaye and Rava is we always paskin like Rava besides 6 cases. So we paskin like Rava here. Okay, nishbis chayav l'vdoisa v'chulu. We said in the Mishnah that a person is obligated to redeem his wife. So now the Gemara will focus on another aspect of this basic obligation that a husband has to redeem his wife. If she was captured in the time when the husband is alive, now the husband passed away. So if Baila Hikaba, if the husband was aware of this circumstance and he knew that this is his obligation, so now, again, Hikaba Baila, the husband is aware of this, Yershin Chayavin Livdaisa. So the children will have to, they have the obligation to go and redeem her. Lo Hikaba Baila, if the husband was not aware of this yet in his lifetime, Ein Yershin Chayavin Livdaisa. Then the children do not have to go and redeem this his wife, whether it's the mother, whether it's not. Well, I don't know. If the husband knew about this, they're obligated. If not, not. So the Gemara says, Levi Levi was going to pasken according to what we just learned in this brayse. That it will depend if the father knew about it or not, or if the husband knew about it or not. So Rav said, Chavivi said to me, this is Rav Chia, which is his uncle, we do not paskin like this brayse that was just quoted, Elikiha the Tanya. Rather, we paskin like this brayse here. And the brayse here does not make a distinction whether the father knew about it or did not know about it. It doesn't make that distinction. The brayse says as follows: Nishbis lacha mises baila. A wife was captured after the husband passed away. Ein hayisayim chayav levdaisa. The children, the yisayim, they do not have an obligation to redeem his wife. If it might be their mother, might not be their mother, they don't have an obligation to redeem her. And not only this, if she was already redeemed in the time when the husband was still alive, and then he passed away, the husband passed away, the children will not have to redeem her, and this brayse makes no distinction whether the husband knew about it, he was aware, unaware, it makes no difference. And the reason is because I cannot apply here what it says in the Kesubos, that I'm going to redeem you and bring you back to be my wife. He passed away already. So therefore, after he passes away, this obligation does not continue. Tana Rabbanon, and a Braisa we learned as follows. How far does this obligation go to redeem one's wife? It could be a lot of money. So Nishbis, if she was captured, and the people that captured her are requesting to redeem her 10 times her value. So Pam Rishayna, the first time this happens, Paida. He's obligated to redeem her. Mikan ve'elech, but if this happens again, so Ratza Paida, Ratza Eina Paida. If he wants, he can redeem her, and if he wants, he does not redeem her. From the language of Rashi, it seems that means the second time, he's not even obligated to redeem her even for her value. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Ein Paitin d'Sashvuin Yosal Kadei Demeyan. We never redeem someone that's captured more than the value of what they are, because this is the Chum instituted this in order that they should not take advantage of this. If you're going to make him pay more than what the value is the first time, so then they're going to do it again and again. Did I have a quote of this Gemara? I mean, this will be passing like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Did I have a quote of this in Eretz Yisrael when it comes to redeeming people that are unfortunately captured in such situations? You can't, even though it's like a terrible circumstance, but tikkun olam, the pikuach nefesh of the tikkun olam for what could happen in the future. He's saying over here it's not necessarily a case of pikuach nefesh. Over here it's just redeeming his wife in a case where it's lavdah. If it's mamish pikuach nefesh. Okay, it's a good question. I don't want to say, but it's but right over here this is a very tikkun olam. So he says you never redeem more than the value. Okay, but now the Gemara says, what do we understand from Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion? Ha b'chdei demeyen paidin, but if it is the value of what his wife is, so then you do have to redeem her. Now the chiddush is afal gav, that is even in a case the perkaina yosal ksubasa, even if the value that he has to pay for redeeming her will be more than the ksuba money that he would have to pay her. That's what it will come out from. What it says in this brayso. But now the Gemara will bring in another brayso. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel will say that the money you have to pay to redeem your wife cannot go exceed the amount of the ksuba. But Amini, I'll ask you a contradiction. Nishbis, if the wife was captured, and they were asking for her redemption up to 10 times the amount of what the payment of the ksuba is. So Pam Rishayna, the first time, paida, he redeems her. But then after the first time, if he wishes, he redeems her. If not, he doesn't have to redeem her even for her value. But Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, whenever the money to redeem her is up to the amount of what the ksuba is, then he has to redeem her. But if not, if it exceeds the amount of the ksuba, then he does not redeem it. Okay, so Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's opinion is that the whole t'nai of the ksuba, that he has to redeem her, cannot be more than the actual payment of the ksuba itself. So, but before it's from the previous brayso, it seemed like as long as it's her value, he does have to redeem her, even if it exceeds the amount of the ksuba. So the Gemara answers, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel trei kuli islay. It's not a contradiction. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel actually has two leniencies in this obligation of a husband to redeem his wife. Number one, not more than her value, and number two, not more than the value of the ksuba. If it's going to be more than either one of them, more than her value or more than the value of the ksuba, he's not going to be obligated to redeem her. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, either one, both of these leniencies, not more than her value and not more than the value of the ksuba. If it'll be more than either one of them, he won't be obligated to redeem her. Laksa chayav l'rapaisa. Mishnah said that if she's not well, the husband is obligated to heal her. So Tana Rabbana we learned in Abrayis Almana Nizainis Menichsi Yisaimin. The Almana gets fed from the money of the Yisaimin. That's one of the conditions of a ksuba, that the Almana gets fed. And also, it's richa refuah, if she's not well and she needs to pay the medical bills, that's the same like the food that she's fed. Just like food is for her to live, so too the medical bills is also equivalent to mezainis, to live. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says there's a distinction here. Refuah sheyesh lo kitzva, if there's medical bills, there's a certain thing that there's a certain illness or whatever it is that she has, and it's a kitzva, it's a particular amount that you have to pay for this, and that's it. So then, Nisrapis Miksubasa, that's something that they don't have to pay separately for this, like Mzainis, but it comes from the ksuba money. She gets her ksuba, and that's what she uses to heal herself. She'ein lo kitzva, if this is an ongoing thing that you don't know what the amount of the medical expenses will be, so then Areika Mzainis. That's actually similar to Mzainis, just like when it comes to feeding somebody. it's not something that you could put a cap in it and say, okay, this is what it is. Every day again, he has to feed her. So too when it comes to this situation of refuah, where it's every day again and it keeps on going on and there's no particular kitzvah, so that falls into the same category as mezainis, and it's not something that she can take from her ksuba. So that they will obligate it to give her like the food they have to give her. Amar Rabbi Yechanan said, also akozdas dam be'eretz Yisrael. They considered letting blood in Eretz Yisrael kirefua she'en lo kitzvah, like a kind of a healing that's something that never has a limit. Because in Eretz Yisrael, because of the climate there, whatever it was, the custom was that they would constantly do akozdas dam, they would constantly let blood for healing purposes, and therefore this is something which is similar to food, which is an ongoing thing, so it falls into the same category. The Gemara brings an incident that happened. Kerevi de Rabbi Yechanan, relatives of Rabbi Yechanan, Havaluhu ita Saba, so their father passed away, and they had their father's wife. It wasn't their mother, but it was their father's wife. That she needed also paying her medical expenses every single day, just like the food she needed. She also needed medical expenses paid every single day. So the question is, they felt like this is too much of a pressure for them to pay, not only for her food but also her daily medical expenses, and it's never ending. So Asla Kamed Rabbi Yechanan, they came to Rabbi Yechanan, which was a relative of theirs, and they discussed this with him. Amalahu, so he says to them, Izilu, go and kutzila midil reifa. Go speak to the doctor that's taking care of her medical condition, and tell the doctor, listen, you're going to take care of this woman for the rest of her life. Give us a set amount of money you want, $10,000, whatever it is, and just take care of her for the rest of her life. And what happens then? Now that the doctor sets a set amount of what they're paying him, so now this does not anymore fall into the category of mezainis. Now they can turn to her and say, look, this is a set amount of money. Once it's a set amount of money, it will come out of your ksubah. So now we don't have to pay it anymore. So this is the advice Rabbi Yechanan gave them that they should be absolved of paying this. Amar Rabbi Yechanan, so now Rabbi Yechanan said, Asinu atzmeinu ka'erchei adayanim. When I gave this advice to my relatives, I'm like coming like a dayan that's taking sides over here. When you have litigants that are in front of a judge, the dayan is not allowed to speak to one party and give advice of how to win the court case. So over here, Rabbi Yechanan says, I gave my relatives advice of how to get themselves out of this obligation for their father's wife. So the Gemara explains, in the beginning, when he gave this advice, what was he thinking? That it was allowed for him to give this advice? And in the end, when he regretted giving this advice, what was he thinking? He says the Gemara, in the beginning, he was thinking, I'm not just a judge, I'm actually part of this party that is paying over here for her, because if I'm a relative, so this is my family, so I am part of this party that is trying to figure out that this is too much expenses to pay for every single day, so it's my flesh, it's my relative, so therefore I'm not giving advice to a litigant in a dintaita, so therefore I'm allowed to give this advice. But in the end, he was thinking to himself, Adam Chashav Shani, in a case where a prominent individual like this, like Rabbi Yechanan, and people may think that it looks like I'm giving advice to one party over the other, I shouldn't do this, so people shouldn't make the mistake that a dayan is allowed to go give advice to one party. Zak Heilige Mishnah, continuing on the conditions that there are in a ksubah. Loi kasav lo, he did not write into the ksubah the condition that there is, and we had this mentioned before, benin dichrin. The sons, the male sons, the Yehavi Luchu Lechi Minoi, which you will have from me, Inun Yarsen Kesek Subasech. They will yarshin the money of the Ksuba, Yeser al Cholkein the Im Achuim, more than all the other inheritance that they get together with the rest of the brothers. So let me just define very clearly what this condition of the Ksuba is. A person is married, and let's say he has two different wives, and one wife has her sons, and the other wife has her sons. So now you have in the ksubah two different parts of the ksubah. Number one, every wife brought into the marriage certain properties and possessions that are written into the ksubah. That what happens in the life of the wife and the husband, it's hers, but the husband has a naw of it. He can eat the peiris. When she passes away, what happens? Who gets all these properties? The husband is the one that inherits it from her, right? And that's one aspect of the ksubah. The other aspect of the ksubah is, of course, the basic ksubah, the fact that a husband is obligated to give his wife, whether a maneh or masayim, if she passes away, or if he passes away, that is, or he divorces her. So the concept of ksubah's benin dichrin is these two aspects of the ksubah. the aspect of the Kesubah that the wife brought from what she got a dowry from her father, and she brought into the marriage. And also the aspect of the Kesubah which the husband obliges himself to give his wife. Those two parts of the Kesubah, if she passes away, and then afterwards the husband passes away, so usually there's a Yerusha that's distributed by everybody equally. But over here, these two parts of the Kesubah are going to be given to her children. And if there's another wife, the Kesubah that was promised to that wife, or the Kesubah that there is to that wife, both the Kesubah that the husband is obligated to give, and also what that wife brought from her father's house into the marriage, and the husband inherited after she passed away. So now, when the husband dies, the children of that wife will get that part of the Kesubah. So that's the idea of Kesubas Benin Dichrin. That usually you would just divide the inheritance equally between everybody, but over here, these two parts of the Kesubah, what she brought from her father's house and what the husband has to give, will go to her children. And even if it wasn't written in the Kesubah, you're still obligated. Why? Shehu Tnai Bezdin. It's still chayiv because this is an obligation, this is a condition from the Bezdin. B'na Nukvin. Now another condition that's in a Kesubah, even if you didn't write it, you'll be obligated. B'na Nukvin, the daughters that you will have with me, you have in Yosfin Bevesi, they can sit in my home even after I pass away, and they will be fed from my properties until they get married. This is what we've been learning before many times about the obligation to give mizainis to the daughters. Chayiv, so even if it's not written, it'll be chayiv, shutnai bezn. This is an obligation of the bezn. A third condition of the Kesubah, ate Yosef Bevesi, you, the wife herself, you'll be living in my home, and you get fed from my properties. Call you may meger al manusech, as long as you're living here as an almana, bebeisi in my home. In other words, if she gets remarried, then it doesn't apply. Chayiv, so then he'll be. So even without writing it into the Kesubah, it's just, you're obligated to give this. Shutnai bezn. This is a condition from the bezn. The people in Yerushalayim would write all this into the Kesubah. The people of Gol would write just like the people of Yerushalayim. The people of Yehuda, regarding this detail over here about the almana being fed, they would write a bit differently. They would write, you'll be fed from me until the Yershin, the children, are going to pay you the Kesubah. So lefichach, therefore, if the Yershin want and they don't want to continuously support her, so what do? Nice and subasa. They give her money of her Kesubah, paitra naisa, and then they send her off and they say, listen, now you have your money of your Kesubah, take care of yourself. So the Gemara here will focus on the first condition, which is called the Kesubas Benin Dichrin, the fact that the sons of one wife will inherit her Kesubah after the husband passes away. So Rabbi Yechon said in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, what is the reason Chachamim instituted this concept that the sons of the wife will get the Kesubah of their mother? The reason is so that the father should want to jump and be excited about giving a lot of money to his daughter when he marries her off to someone. What's a person going to think to himself? I'm going to give my daughter all money and property, or again, a dowry that she's bringing into the marriage. And what happens afterwards? What could happen? The wife will die. And then who's going to inherit everything? Her husband. And then after the husband dies, who's going to inherit everything? The husband's children, which is not necessarily my grandchildren. The husband could be married to a second wife, to a third wife, and other. So then all the money that I'm giving for my daughter is going to be taken away from my grandchildren. It's going to go to his children. So therefore, Chachamim instituted that the Benin Dichrin, that this Kesubah, this Nadan money, this dowry that she brought into the marriage, her children are going to inherit it. So they're just like a son inherits. So over here, the daughter and her children, the children of the daughter, the grandchildren will inherit this. So therefore, will be excited to give a lot of dowry. Back to Gemara, but how do Chachamim institute this? Is there something that Rachmana Amar, that the Torah says, brotherlitis, that it's the son that should inherit, and brata loitiris, and the daughter does not inherit, right? Regular Yerusha is that all the sons are the ones that get the Yerusha. And then the daughter is not involved in Yerusha. Vasa Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan come along in Mesakni, and they institute the Teres brata, that the daughter is the one that inherits. The Gemara doesn't literally mean that the daughter inherits. I mean, the case over here is that she already passed away, but it's her children that are inheriting over here. So it's an interesting question because Chachamim are not really directly uprooting the Yerushim and Atayra. What's happening over here is that they make this condition originally that the husband is obligating himself that this part of the Kesubos will go to her daughters. But indirectly it comes out that now the Yerusha, after he passes away, will not be distributed equally amongst his children. The Benin Dichrin, her sons, will get their Kesubos separate from the Yerusha. So indirectly it's uprooting the regular Yerusha Min HaTorah.
Never really the husband's, it was next thing below.
Correct. Yeah, but after she passes away, it does become 100% his. So now Min HaTorah, once he dies, all the children should yashin this equally. But he already made this condition from before, so it's not really uprooting it Min HaTorah. Okay, but nevertheless, the Gemara is asking that it's altering the way the Yerusha would be Min HaTorah. But it says, we have a source from this in a pasuk as well. It's not mamish min HaTorah, this is a pasuk in Novi, in Yirmiyah. The pasuk says, that you should take wives for your children, and they'll give birth to children. And also for your children, you should marry them off to wives, and for your daughters, you should marry them off to men. That's what the pasuk here says. This is the obligation of a father to marry off his children. So, but the question is, when it says over here that for his sons that they should go and marry wives, so he should take for them wives biyade kaimit. So this is something that's in his hands. Why? So as Rashi brings of it, the reason is because it says in the Gemara in Kedushin, darkei shel ish lichbaish, that it's customary for the man that looks for a wife, and he's the one that can find a wife. So therefore it's the man that can go and find a wife. So therefore it's in his hands. Ela benose, but when it comes to his daughters, mi kaimin biyade, is that in his hands? The girls, they have to wait for the husbands to go and find her. So what does it mean when it says over here that his daughters, that he should go, that they're going to go and take a husband? So rather, what does it mean? Oh, kamash malon. What it means is as follows. Take care of your daughter. You make her attractive. The nilbisha, the nichsa, dress her, cover her, the nesev la midi, and give her something. Give her money. Make sure that people will understand. So the men should come and jump. They should want to get married to her. And they'll want to come and get married to her. So we see over here this concept already in a pasuk that it's important for a father to take care of his daughter and to promise a good dowry, so the men should want to marry her. So therefore, Chachamim wanted that a father should understand that whatever money he's giving to his daughter are going to end up by his grandchildren. If his wife, if she passes away and then the husband will yashin it will still go to his grandchildren. So he'll want to give this. Says the Gemara Vat Kama. How much does the what?
But the son, if he has a son,
but by the son, you don't have to be worried. The he's going to find a wife that he'll go out. By a daughter, though, it's not exactly the same. Okay, Va'at Kama. So the Gemara says, and how much does a person give for his daughter? Abai v'Rav v'Amrit Tarvaya, Abai and Rav both said, Ad le'isr nichsi, a tenth of all of his properties, all of whatever he owns, he should be giving a tenth for a dowry for his daughter. Okay, now the Gemara goes back to this whole concept of Kesubos Benin Dichrin. So we shall say as follows: if the whole reason for this takana is all because we want to excite the father to give money for his daughter, so if so, the av lirus, that part of the Kesubos, which is what the father gave his daughter and she brought into the marriage, that's what her children should yashin after the husband passes away. But the Baal leileris, the other part of the Kesubos, which is what the husband promises his wife, the obligation he has to give a mana or masayim, that part of that the husband is giving his wife, why should her children yashin that? There's no reason for this. Says the Gemara, there is a reason, because Im Kain, if you're going to say that part that the husband promises to give his wife for the Kesubos, that her children do not get the husband's part, so Avnami Mimna V'Lei Kosav. So the father's going to turn around and say, I'm also not giving my part as well. If I see that the husband is selfish, and he says that my part that I want to give my wife, I'm not going to give to her sons when I pass away. So the father's going to say, I'm not going to give my part either. If the whole point over here is that the father should want to give, so if it's a case that the father actually gave a dowry, so then we're concerned about his part that he should want to give, and he's giving his part. So then lichtov bal. So then the husband should write this also as a condition in the Kesubos that it's all going to her sons. What's if the father didn't give anything? So the part of the Kesubos, the father is not here at all. So then the husband should not at all be writing that his part of the Kesubos should go to her sons. Because again, the original whole point is to all get the father excited about the father should be motivated to want to give his part, but if the father is not giving anything anyways, so then there should be no reason to institute Kesubos benin dichrin in such a case. Says the Gemara, loy plug rabbana. Chachamim did not want to make any distinction. They left this takana in place in every situation. Fragt the Gemara, bas ben abanim nami tiris. If so, why is this whole takana only for benin dichrin, the sons, the males? Only the sons of this wife get the whole ksubah that came from her father, the dowry, and from her husband that he obligated to her. It should be even for a daughter. Why should there even be a difference between a son or a daughter? And says the Gemara, Kenachla Shavua Rabbana. When Chachamim instituted this, they made it the same like it is with the halacha of Yerusha in general, which is only for sons. Sons Yarshin, not daughters. Over here as well, Chachamim compared it to a regular Yerusha that only the sons get. Fragt the Gemara, but if so, Bas ben Abana is Tiris. So if it's a daughter of this wife, amongst other daughters of maybe other wives, so then this daughter should inherit. Because in such a case, the Yerusha does go to daughters. If they're making it like a Yerusha, but over here, who's the ones that are Yarshining? The daughters. Says the Gemara, lay plug Rabbanan. The Chacham didn't make a distinction, since usually there are sons, and the sons Yarshin, so this Kesubos benin dichrin as well is only 4 sons. You should also be allowed to collect even from metaltlin, from movable items, for this Kesubos benin dichrin, for this unique Kesubah, for this unique Yerusha here that's in the Kesubos benin dichrin. So the Gemara says again, Kesubah shavua rabbanan. They considered this obligation of Kesubos benin dichrin to be just like the rest of the Kesubah. The rest of the Kesubah you could only take from karka, not from metaltlin, at least in the times of the Gemara. Later the Gaonim did institute that you can take Kesubah even from metaltlin, as Taistis here brings. But in the time of the Gemara, Kesubah could only be collected from karka. So too the Kesubos benin dichrin could only be collected from karka. Fact the Gemara titraiv mimishabdi. You should be allowed to collect for the Kesubos benin dichrin even from the properties that are not even here anymore, but they were sold off to somebody else, so they should be able to go to the buyer and take away those properties because of this obligation that's already written before into the Kesubah. Says the Gemara yarson tanan. But the expression that it says in the Mishnah is the term yarson, which is they inherit this. Inherit is only if it's currently in the possession of the father that passed away, and not if it was already sold off. One more point the Gemara asks on this. We should say that this halacha of Kesubos benin dichrin should apply even in a case where there's no extra dinner. What this means is, this is a Mishnah later in the Masechta that will explain that we only apply this unique Yerusha of Kesubos benin dichrin in a case where there has to be at least one dinner that could be distributed amongst the Yarshim equally, which is the Yerusha min HaTorah. Chachamim will not place their institution of Kesubos benin dichrin in such a situation where it completely uproots the Yerusha min HaTorah. So the question is, what we should apply, the Gemara is asking, we should apply this Kesubos benin dichrin even in a case where there is no extra dinner to distribute the Yerusha for everybody equally. Says the Gemara, if it uproots the Kesubah min HaTorah, so then they did not make this institution for Kesubos benin dichrin.